Okay, so hello and welcome everyone. Welcome, dear Sangha. Today we have a very special event with Ayya Soma, who is a pioneering Western Bhikkhuni from Italy, who is the co-founder of Buddhist Insights, which is really probably the preeminent, really one of the main modern Western Dharma groups in the US, offering opportunities for ordination and also giving regular access for Dhamma teachings and Q&As online through their Buddhist Insights YouTube channel. Ayya Soma helped found um, the center, the monastery, Empty Cloud Monastery in New Jersey with Bhante Sudaso. And I've stayed there. I've been there. It's a beautiful place and a hub for Dharma in the West. And now Ayya Soma is taking on a new project for developing a similar modern-minded and progressive meditation center and monastery and spiritual hub here in Italy. So I reached out to her with the great hope that she would be able to make the time to share with our community, the Monk Life Meditation community, which has parallel or similar intentions and aspirations to the Buddhist Insights organization. And we're very blessed and honored to have you here, Ayya. And yeah, I'll just let you take it away and maybe introduce yourself a bit more and share about the work that you're doing. And please do share any Dhamma that you're currently inspired by. Okay, thank you so much, Ayya, and I'll give it over to you.
Thank you so much, Bhante Varapanyo, for this really kind introduction. Way too kind. I'm just a bhikkhuni, just an alms mendicant. You made it sound a lot nicer than what it really is. But yeah, I'm very grateful for this invitation and Anumotana Sadhu for building all of this online space for so many people to come and practice together the teachings of the Buddha. So yeah, as yourself, I'm currently here in Italy. I'm actually at my parents' place right now. So my mom's place, because my dad actually died a couple of months ago. So I'm here visiting my mom and in Rome, and at the same time trying to see if the conditions arise to for Empty Cloud Italia, so the Italian version of Empty Cloud USA, to come into being in Italy, where I'm originally from. And so this would allow personally myself to be close to my mom, but in a more suitable environment than the one that you're currently seeing, which is, sort of the house, right, of my parents, and where I spent a bit of my childhood growing up. That can be a little bit challenging for us monastics when we have aging parents, and then we just like lay people, we have different duties towards our parents, and they can get older and sicker, but it's a little bit more challenging for us monastics when those things happen, and then we have to somewhat take care of our parents, but without having a suitable environment. So when disasters happen in life, when the first noble truth happens, hits us, right, really hard. So old age, sickness, and death. Either we have the reaction of kind of feeling sorry for ourselves, getting depressed, or we can take it as an opportunity to really anukampa, this really beautiful word in Pali that means trembling together and understanding that we're all in it together, right? So my suffering is no different than the suffering outside. So this is a little bit actually what kind of created the conditions in my heart to open up and try to see if a monastery could happen in Italy, because whenever a monastery opens, it's not just a house for monastics, but it's actually a house for everyone to cultivate the heart. And it's a place where each one of us actually starts creating a community, just like the one we have here online, where so many different beings from so many different parts of the world, so many different yeah, perhaps likes and dislikes, different cultures, different mother tongues, maybe. You know, my mother tongue is Italian. I doubt there are many people here who share my mother tongue, right? So, what is it that brings us here, though, to today? It's this understanding of dukkha and this desire to want to get out of dukkha. And when we actually find this really beautiful, precious Dhamma, the teachings of the Buddha that give us a practical way out, then in that way, when we are dealing with our dukkha, we can actually also support others to transcend the dukkha, right? And so this is what a monastery is, a place where many beings come, create community, start going against the stream together instead of just doing a solo crazy thing where everybody's going with the stream and we're trying to go against the stream and then the stream overtakes us, right? But if we actually practice together, then we can create that momentum where we're all supporting each other. And we don't feel that crazy. We're actually like, well, this is difficult, but there's other people who are doing, this difficult task with myself. And somehow by trembling together, by this anukampa, then it becomes something doable, becomes something easier, becomes we shed a little bit of the dukkha, right? Which is literally means this Pali word that literally means difficult to bear. So it becomes a little bit more tolerable, a little bit more tolerable to actually, just understand that we're in it together and we can support each other's together. So these are some words that come, but Bhante Varapadya, you're the main leader of this group. So how about I pass it on to you and maybe you give some suggestions if you'd like to do some meditation or if people would like to ask questions or I can keep on rambling on and on, but maybe you have a bit of an idea.
Yeah, I think that what I'm very interested in, and probably the community is interested in as well, is to learn a little bit more about kind of how you started in Buddhism and becoming a practitioner, and then how you transitioned to becoming a bhikkhuni, and then kind of how that all went into the development of this this organization that's really thriving. This is something our community is kind of looking at right now in terms of creating a nonprofit and just a more established, I guess, legally established dynamic to the community so that we can do social works and we can bring more people in to get more support. Like you said, creating these meditation centers and monasteries, it's not really about the monks specifically. It's about the Dhamma community and having a place to practice, having a place of refuge, having a place that is not just materially protected and supported, but also spiritually protected and supported. And this is like a rare gem. So yeah, how you stepped into that practice in that way, and then kind of how you've gotten to this point, and maybe what you're looking for in the future, what your aspirations are. Thank you, Aya.
Sadhu, thank you, Bante. Yes, my story is very similar to many. So I always had the aspiration to be happy, very ambitious aspiration to be happy. And So back in the day when I was a layperson, I thought that happiness meant having a great relationship, having a great job, having great friends, having sort of great surroundings, not settling for something less than great, than 100% great. And so, yeah, I put a lot of effort, in all my 20s to actually, and also early 30s to really achieve that. And yeah, so I did mm, uh, fall in love, madly in love, great relationship, found a great job. Yeah, a great job. Found all sorts of things that, were pretty great, like great friends. Then I moved to New York City. First, I moved from Milan to London, then from London to New York City. And then from within New York City, I was like, Manhattan, not the best, maybe Brooklyn. And then Brooklyn was like, could be better. So then I'll go to Queens. So always chasing, a sort of better situation. And at a certain point, I kind of got the dukkha of, getting what I wanted. We always think that dukkha is not getting what we want, but sometimes actually there's dukkha of getting what we want. And so I got a lot of dukkha of getting what I wanted. And I was not understanding why I was still unhappy after having pretty much sort of the somewhat ideal conditions. And I had already actually found the teachings of the Buddha earlier, about 6 years earlier than when I actually really started pursuing the path. So I was in my late 20s when I found the teachings of the Buddha, but I was still like, wrapped up with all my ideas of what happiness meant. So I remember thinking, yes, there is suffering. Yes, this noble truth says there is suffering. But there's also a lot of good stuff that I need to, that are good, that are fun, that I'm sure that if I pursue, I will be happy. And so, as I mentioned, I pursued them, and then I was still unhappy, and I went back to the monastery. And I remember listening to these teachings where actually, Bhante Sudaso, the co-founder of the organization, Buddhist Insights, back then he was a bhikkhu at Bhavana Society Monastery in West Virginia, and I went on retreat there. He was one of the teachers, and he said something along the lines that everything in samsara is inherently unsatisfying. And in that moment, my mind was ready to understand exactly what that meant. And basically, the reason why I was still unhappy, which is I was always trying to find happiness in things that were inherently unsatisfying. And so, of course, you get, the shot, like we're all kind of addicts, right? We're samsara addicts. We pursue whatever is the object of desire. We get it, it's a hit. We're high for a period of time, and then we're back to square one again, always looking for the next hit. So in that moment, I understood the dynamic. I hadn't transcended it, obviously, but I understood what was going on. So the pathology, so to speak, that had been somewhat cursing me for all this period of time. And so, literally, after 3 months that I met Bhante Sudaso, I quit whatever I was doing. So, I used to work in fashion. I was a freelancer back then, a freelance journalist. And I quit my job, quit everything that I was doing, and I started Buddhist Insights, an organization to connect people with monastics in New York City. So I was the first person that I wanted to be connected with people, with monastics. And Bhante Sudaso kindly decided to move from the forest to New York City to create the conditions for the organization to start. And shortly thereafter, we opened a retreat center, and we were offering retreats literally every week, back to back, led by different monastics of all different traditions, actually. And so, yeah, at a certain point, since actually the birth of this organization entailed for myself to start practicing as a renunciant, so not having a wage anymore, literally living like a semi-monastic, basically. And after a while, I also had shaved my head to see if I was attached to my hair or not. And I remember at a certain point looking at my face in the mirror and going, well, I look like a monk. I live like a monk. I live in a monastery. Maybe I want to be a monk. And so I decided to then pretty much acknowledge what I was already doing, which was basically living a renunciant life that was, for the first time in my life, actually making me really happy. Because I wasn't paradoxically chasing all the things that I liked, like I used to do as a layperson. As I mentioned, I was like, oh, I like doing this, but I don't like doing that. I like to do this. I like to be with these people, but not with these other people. So, I had a very curated life when I was a layperson. And when we started instead the Buddhist organization, it wasn't about what I liked or what I disliked, but the question was more, what is needed? And so sometimes what was needed was to clean the bathroom. And sometimes what was needed was to send emails. And sometimes what was needed was to cook. And sometimes what was needed was to share the Dhamma. And sometimes what was needed it was all sorts of different things. And that made me happier and happier. Um, and that realization of being happier and happier because it was not about me anymore. It's not about me. I want that. I like that, but I don't like that. So all of a sudden, this me, I wasn't there anymore, and there was so much more happiness and tranquility and calm and peace in the mind. So it was a no-brainer. Uh, that's why I went forth to acknowledge that, the teachings of the Buddha really worked. They were counterintuitive at first. They still are, to a certain degree, counterintuitive, but there's so much, the more you let go, the more peace and happiness comes to the mind and heart. And so, yeah, that was my entry in monastic life, and I've been blessed to still to this day to have so many teachers and so many spiritual companions. Of course, Bhaktisudazo being my sort of spiritual guide, main guide in this path, and also um, I co-founded Empty Cloud Monastery with him after a couple of years, which is a gender inclusive monastery. That simply means that we remove the barriers based on bodies to practice the Dhamma, and to also take the form, the monastic form. So that's simply what it means, a gender inclusive monastery. Everybody's welcome as long as they have the aspiration to follow the teachings of the Buddha. And then, as I mentioned, a few sort of problems with my family happened after COVID, and that brought me, after 15 years, back to Italy to come and visit my parents, try to take care of them as much as I could. And at the same time, also, I connected with many people here in the country who are very interested in the Dhamma, to my delight, actually. I had no idea that people were so interested in Buddhism in Italy since I've been living in the US for over 15 years now. And and so here we are now trying to create another community. And I'm so happy to hear that Bhaktivedanta is also working on establishing more solid grounds to this community as well. What a blessing. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
a large part of our online Sangha is actually female women. And so I'm wondering if you could say a little bit about your experiences in, approaching monasticism as a woman, because I know that as a man, especially in Theravada countries, it's a very different experience between there's a lot of sexism, there's a lot of gender discrimination. So I wonder if you could speak a little bit about your experiences as being not just a nun, like a 10 precept nun or something like that, but a fully ordained bhikkhuni, and also maybe a little bit of the background about that some people may not know about that current situation and this revitalization of the Theravada Bhikshuni Sangha.
You, Bante. Yes, it's very interesting because the characteristics of the Dhamma. The Buddha says in the suttas that um, whether there is a Buddha in the world or not, everything has the characteristics of anicca, dukkha, anatta. So anicca, impermanence, dukkha, unsatisfactoriness or suffering, and anatta, so not self or impersonal, the impersonality of all things. And so this actually, the latter, the anatta, the teachings of non-self, are the central teachings of the Buddha. They are really, we can say, what make Buddhism very special. We have a lot of what we can call the spiritual technology, meditation. There's so many different things, different practices. Also, the teachings of morality. There's a lot of overlap with a lot of different spiritual systems. But the teachings of anatta, of non-self, are really, really exclusive to the Buddha, or what actually it's this insight, this understanding of how things are that the Buddha had. And how the Buddha created his monastic order, he created he created the Sangha, right? And the Sangha had both bhikkhus and bhikkhunis. Since its inception, it's not something that is a modern ordeal. It's not something that is the cause of progress, but actually it was there from also this understanding that it's not the body that gets enlightened, right? But it's actually something else that we need to understand. And that the body is just a body. The body is just this big sack of meat and bones and organs that we need to carry around. And of course, this is a really, really incredible teaching, really radical teaching that, I feel even after, even today, there is such a kind of a strong sense of gender, a strong sense of male, female being, something really absolute that we have. And so when we are talking about the original teachings of the Buddha, we're not even talking about gender equality. We're actually talking about transcending gender. So something beyond. Even feel like the Buddha is so advanced. He's so beyond even today, even like the most woke sort of scenario, even the most progressive, even the most feminist discourse. The Buddha is way ahead, not only of his times, but also of our times. So, of course, it's just so natural that as the Buddha passed away and as arhats also became a little bit less common than at the time of the Buddha, then something that seems so real to us, like this body and its differences in a patriarchal society, then, of course, created conditions for it not to be seen as okay for women to practice. And so this is a little bit what we've seen in the history of Buddhism, unfortunately, that there has been some forms of discrimination, some forms of obstruction for women to enter this path, and also the creation of some new forms that mainly has happened in the past 1 or 2 centuries. Most of the new forms have happened at the end of the 19th century and beginning of 20th century. And I believe in Burma, that was the first one. The Tilashin form was something that started happening in the 700s or the 800s, early 800s. But as we see, these are very new forms. The Bhikkhuni form is instead something that comes from the time of the Buddha. And these days, when we talk about Bhikkhu form or Bhikkhuni form, there is both the definition that is from the time of the Buddha, which literally means alms mendicant, literally means, outside of the hierarchy, literally a beggar, literally someone that leaves everything behind. So there is that, someone, a seeker for for a spiritual path. And there is also right now a religious hierarchy in all sorts of different Buddhist countries. So then one is not only a bhikkhu or a bhikkhuni, but they are, to use Catholic terms, also can be a bishop, an archbishop, a cardinal, and so forth. Obviously, they're called not in these terms. They might have different Asian terms. And so this is a little bit the problem that we have. It's not necessarily that people don't want women to practice the Dhamma, but there can be a tension when the practice of Dhamma then overlaps with these institutions. And so when we kind of are able to separate the two, at least this has been somewhat the mission of my of my monastic life. At the very beginning, I was very confused why people were why some people were so angry, for example, that I had this form, or why people weren't happy that I was about to get into this form, or why there were so many obstructions. I was like, well, wait, I'm not seeing anyone going to beggars, in Times Square telling them, stop being an alms mendicant, stop being poor, stop being homeless, right? So since I was living my choice in that way, I was a little confused why in Buddhism there was such a hostility in that respect. And that made me do some digging and understand, unwrap what is the Dhamma and what is the sort of religious hierarchy. And it can be hurtful if you have a female body to having to deal with the religious hierarchy. It can be quite disappointing. It can be very upsetting. One might want to also disrobe. That was the case for me when at the very beginning, there was a lot of mistreatment. And then unfortunately, I was starting to identify all of this with the teachings of the Buddha. So then automatically, I didn't want to follow those teachings anymore. But when I was capable of separating the two and understanding, okay, these are the teachings of the Buddha, this is something later, this is the hierarchy, then the teachings of the Buddha is all that matters. And all of that, we can just remove it. We can just, or understand it for what it is. So that's also the reason why I dedicated so much time in my life to create spaces for practice where the religious sort of hierarchy wasn't really a predominant factor, and so where we can forget a little bit all of these gender issues and focus a little bit more on the Dhamma, on the practice, on the teachings of liberation. Because these problems, I will just add that, usually we talk about problems for bhikkhunis, problems for women in Buddhism, but actually there are problems for everyone. Because whenever we create these paradigms, then they become obstructions for the awakening of everyone. So whether, we have a conceit of inferiority as women or a conceit of superiority as men, it's still a conceit. And the conceit is what we need to get rid of. And that's dependently arisen. So we need to remove the conditions at the base that create the product of whether it's a conceit of superiority or inferiority, it doesn't matter. So what are those causes? And once we identify those causes, we remove them. And not necessarily that we have to change the world, but we can change, our backyard. So that's more my focus. I'm not going to go and try to change every single monastery or Buddhist country. Actually, all of these places have their reason to exist, and I'm very grateful I was able to find the Dhamma through all of these different realities. But rather, for me, the question is, what is the environment that helps me as a practitioner to practice? And how can I put those conditions in place where most of the time I don't have to deal with other stuff that have nothing to do with the Dhamma? So this is what I would say, and I encourage every woman and every man and every other non-binary person, every person that is interested essentially in practicing the Dhamma to really try and do that work of separating the two and just focusing on the Dhamma.
Thank you so much, Ayya Soma. This is really, really interesting, and it's so nice to hear you speak about this. I can share a little bit of an anecdote. When I first moved to Thailand in 2018 and was interviewing at different temples to see about ordaining, and the monk who at a certain point made arrangements and supported me to be able to ordain. He was a Pali scholar, I think level 6 or 7 at that time. They have this hierarchy of scholarship for Pali. And at one point he said the topic of women came up, and he a lot of my teachers before I went to Thailand and before I kind of got integrated into monastic Buddhism were women. And even since I've been a Buddhist, a lot of mentors have been women, bhikshunis, and teachers that I've retreated with. But I remember we were on the train together, and he said something about, that Buddha said, like, women can't be enlightened, or that, women are somehow inherently less than in some way spiritually. And I said, are you sure about that? Did the Buddha actually say that? And when he went and checked his, I think they have like an app or something he was using, and when he went to find that sutta and that teaching, of course, it was a commentary. It wasn't the Buddha's teachings, and that's something I've really enjoyed about Bhante Sudaso when I've met him, is how authoritative he is about what is apocryphal, what is like commentary and things that came after, and what is original, like the words of Buddha. So yeah, it's really really wonderful. Okay, well, at this point, maybe we can see if there are any questions that the community has, and of course, if something else comes up that you want to share, that's really interesting as well. Maybe while some questions are brewing, could you say about like where the project is in Italy, and what the what the starting points are and what the needs are so far?
Yes, thank you, Bante. We were trying to set up the monastery right outside Bari, in the countryside, actually, of my dad's hometown. So this all happened actually because he passed away last October. And so when we brought his body to the family tomb back in his village in Puglia, so the heel of Italy, we did a funeral there. And all of a sudden, after the funeral, this giant forest, it's a really giant forest, 135 acres of pristine forest, sort of materialized out of nowhere. That land, actually, there is hardly any forest at all. And we found it, and it was for sale, and it kind of all seemed like it was the kind of ideal situation where to start a monastery and a retreat center, because it has a big masseria, it's called. So like a hacienda, like a farmhouse, basically, in the middle. That can be renovated. And then lots of folks got very excited because the land actually used to be a spiritual destination for millennia. So 1,000 years ago, there are caves in the place. So there's the cave of Saint Elijah, that 1,000 years ago, there was this monk that was practicing there. He was also a wandering monastic. So we entered the cave, and it's just incredible to feel the devas inside. Still this incredible spiritual practice that has been done there. And actually, even before Saint Elijah, it used to be a Zeus temple. And even before that, in Neolithical times, actually, the archaeologist that is currently volunteering his work, he's associated with the archaeological excavations of Pompeii. So he also happens to come from that area, and he's volunteering. He volunteered his time. He went there, and he found some traces also of Neolithical spiritual practice. So it's quite magical. It kind of like, um, yeah, it was kind of too good to be true. So we contacted the owners. The owners also were actually already about to sell the land, but they heard about our aspiration of the project. So then they decided to hold on a second and wait for us to fundraise. And so this is what we're currently doing. We're fundraising this is really a grassroots project. So there's tons of different people, like literally sending small donations in order to make this project happen. And we are almost at a third of the amount raised. And yeah, so it all depends on people like you, whether or not this project happens. So by donating, sharing everything, that's how this kind of magic happens. That's also the story of Empty Cloud Monastery in the USA. We don't have one single donor or two single donors, but it's rather lots of people that, yeah, just want beauty to happen in the world, and they contribute to beauty.
How do we bring the like the Western group? How do we develop I think the faith and the trust and also the inspiration for the Western lay people to get more involved in dana and also seeing themselves as a part, because I think that's where the strong connection is, seeing themselves as a part of the Sangha, as a part of the life of the monk, because in Asia we're being fed every day. And also at the monastery, I know at Buddhist Insights there are people coming and feeding the monks every day, and how do we convey that? How do we bring people into that so that they can feel that connection? That's so, I mean, it's so incredible. It's so amazing to be in Asia and to have all these people that are concerned about what I'm eating today, that I'm fed and that I have water, these kinds of things. So
Mhm.
how do we bring that all together?
Yes, thank you, Bante. Yeah, it was something that I was also reflecting upon lately, just actually seeing the amount of courses now that there are even in Italy on mindfulness, and so many courses on meditation here and meditation there, and method this and method that, and this other new method TM, and method today special only discount. There's like so much stuff out there that is quite crazy. So when we think of the method that the Buddha taught in the suttas, in the early discourses, there is actually a Buddha method, and that, with the monastics, the Buddha, or with renunciants, the Buddha had different ways of sharing the teachings. But I have to say that with lay people, there was something that was quite consistent, and it was a gradual sort of method. And the gradual method really starts with Dhanakatam, Silakatam, Sangakatam. So it starts not with mindfulness, it doesn't start with meditation, it doesn't even start with the Four Noble Truths, but it actually starts with the teachings on generosity. It starts with the teachings on so Dhanakatam, and then it starts with the teachings on Silakatam, so virtue. Then also the teachings on Sangakatam, on heavens. Another unpopular subject in the West, right? That we like to say, oh, Buddhism is not a religion, it's a philosophy, or Buddhism is a way of life. It doesn't really have deities and so forth. But very, very interesting that these are the first three teachings that the Buddha gives to lay people. And then when he sees that they're ready, even then, he doesn't teach them meditation or mindfulness, but actually he teaches them the drawbacks of sensuality. He's like, okay, now you're ready to understand what the drawbacks of sensuality are, and how they pollute the mind. And then after that, here are the benefits of renunciation. Wonderful. And then once the minds of people are, he sees that the minds of people are really supple, ready, confident, they're joyful, etc. Then in that case, in that situation, then he teaches the Four Noble Truths. And usually the result is some sort of form of awakening, actually. Someone enters the stream, or anyway, they become very devout practitioners of the Buddha. So it's very interesting to me how these days we're doing it all the other way around. And having run a Buddhist meditation center for so many years in New York City, I have to say that I noticed one thing. And it was that we would have so many people, lots of Westerners that perhaps had been meditating for many, many years, and they would come and during retreats and still struggle here and there, and fidget and maybe move, and it was a little bit of a dukkha 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 retreat sometimes for meditation. But then every now and then, we'd have some Asian Buddhists who had never meditated in their lives, or maybe had meditated once when they were 12 years old. I remember this friend, May, Burmese, she arrived and she was like, oh yeah, I haven't meditated since I was 13 or something. And she was in her 30s. And she was excited to, do this retreat in order to share the merits of her practice with her family. And she sits down, boom, like a rock for hours. I'm like, wow. How is it possible that this lady, only meditated once several decades ago, and seems to be so still and so peaceful and can access samadhi so easily. And then this other friend, gang from Thailand, sort of same story, boom, sits down, practices really intensely. And then also some other Thai friends, Kate, like I've been seeing this recurrent pattern of Thai people or Burmese people or Sri Lankan people, like you name it, people from Buddhist cultures that normally are raised with Dhanakatam, Silakatam, Sagakatam. So all these teachings on giving, all these teachings on virtue, all these teachings on heavens. And when they, even though they might not have even a sort of regular meditation practice, when they actually take on the sort of teachings of wisdom, the teachings of meditation, they just have such an easier time. And why is that? Because we see also in the early teachings of the sutta, a happy mind gets easily concentrated. So all of these practices, first and foremost, render the mind happy. So whenever we give, we're happy. Whenever we are actually virtue, we're happy. We can recollect that. And also heaven, understanding that all the good deeds that we're doing are having a great effect right now, right here in this lifetime, but also in future lifetimes. Like, the Buddha says, do not be afraid of merit, even to us monastics. He's like, I remember when I did all that merit, I had tons of eons of great time. So the Buddha's like, yeah, do not be afraid of merit, even you monastics. Merit is punya, is a synonym of happiness. And so that is already a form of wisdom. And obviously, when we go to the Four Noble Truths, the cause of dukkha. What is the cause of dukkha is tanha. So this craving, this incessant, thirst that we can't ever fulfill. So if we're constantly craving things, obviously dana is the biggest antidote to that. Like biggest in the sense of coarse, like the way to remove the most coarse craving out of the heart, because you already understand that by giving, oh, you're releasing yourself, you're accessing a lot of happiness. And so that is already a form of wisdom. It's something, it's very democratic, easily accessible. We can do it. We don't have to be in a sort of crazy retreat environment in order to practice dana. We can practice it every moment, every day. Whether we're at work or we're not at work, whether, we're out and about in the city or we're at home, like it doesn't matter where we are, whether we're at the temple or we're outside the temple. So that's a practice that is easily accessible and makes us already release a little bit of suffering. So when we understand that, then we also start understanding, why do monastics have all these crazy precepts? And also us monastics, we start to understand, why do we have all these crazy precepts? I mean, it would be much easier to just get a job and cook and, make our own food and, just support ourselves. But the whole point, is my understanding, is that the Buddha really made, he's such a genius, very simple precepts that create this symbiotic relationship between monastics and lay people. And so lay people always have an opportunity to actually practice dana, right? And we have an opportunity also to practice dana by renouncing, all of the aforementioned, renouncing to cook, renouncing to grow our food, renouncing to be self-sufficient. And also then we can practice contentment with and gratitude of whatever we have offered. So everybody, it's like a win-win situation for everyone. It's just so delightful. And this is a spiritual technology that also is not exclusive to Buddhism. So also Catholic friends actually have it very much enrooted. In fact, when we have gone, for example, to Colombia. I remember we went Pindapata as monastics in Bogota. And at a certain point, this Catholic lady, like so many people came. Once they figured out that we would only accept food and not money, they were excited and enthralled and started giving us lots of food. And then this Catholic lady, after giving us food, stopped in the middle of the square and raised her, put her palms together, raised her head towards the sky and was like, gracias a Dios, like, thank you, God, for giving me the opportunity that there are Buddhist monks where I can actually practice dana, essentially practice generosity. How beautiful. It's the same. It has happened to us actually in Italy when we when we interact with the Catholic, the actual Catholics, the practicing Catholics, they are also very, very happy to be able to give. Because once again, it's one of those, it's a satya, it's a truth. It's a truth that is present in many millenary cultures and many millenary spiritual traditions. And unfortunately, I feel that us new generations are, we're living in the era of Tanhaism, as I call it. So capitalism is basically Tanhaism. It's the teachings of of thirst, endless thirst. So they teach us since we're very young to accumulate and accumulate and accumulate, and that's going to be our happiness, and to just work, 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 and get, and not share, not share, not share. And so it's just a little bit harder because it's not an intuitive teaching. It's not something that we can understand with, we're so smart these days with our brains. We can't understand that. It's a teaching of the heart. We can only understand it when we practice dana. And when we give a little, like Ajahn Chah used to say, you give a little bit, you have a little bit of peace. When you give somewhat, you get somewhat peace. And then if you let go completely, you get complete peace. And so we can all see that for ourselves. And as far as monastics go, I think for us, the duty is to, if we follow the Vinaya, then it's easier for people to understand. If we go Pindapata, and accept food offerings and create those opportunities, then people delight. Dana is not predictable, but it's reliable.
Okay, thank you so much, Ayya Soma. You've shared a lot of your time with us here. Maybe we can see if there are any questions before we finish. Maybe anyone here on the Zoom. Kara, would you like to ask a question? Uh,
Thank you. I was thinking about practicing being as opposed to practicing having and accumulating. So the more people give and share, the world actually becomes a better place, because the mentality of giving as opposed to the mentality of accumulating is its own different thing. Um, uh, I come from an Orthodox religion, so it's not Catholic, it's a Christian Orthodox, and their giving to monks is really important. Like, I have been feeding the monks since I was like a child, basically feeding the poor and the monks. It's normal in my upbringing, and it's such a good feeling to give and to keep to give. And I asked my mom. Like, why more people don't do it, and she said because people do need to accumulate. So I have a question connected to that. No, sorry, I lost it immediately. I got detached from it. So So this idea of people who want to accumulate in order to survive, let's say raise a family and stuff like that, as opposed to people who always practice giving. How do we find that balance? Because like I do understand that becoming a monastic is a whole life dedication. How about for the rest of people? Let's say. I'm not sure if my question is clear enough. Okay,
Yes,
how do we
absolutely.
find the balance?
Thank you so much, Kara. First and foremost, thank you for sharing also your story of connected to the Christian Orthodox tradition. It's really beautiful. And so when we think of dana practice as a practice, no different than meditation practice, right? So practice, what is a practice? It's something that we do. And so we want to approach it as a practice that betters us, and that also that we're increasingly going to become better at. So it's not necessarily what we're giving. It doesn't necessarily have to be material. It doesn't have to be necessarily in a specific amount. But it can, like, giving can be in so many different ways. It can also be non-material giving. So it can be patience, giving patience to others, giving time, especially these days. There's a lot of time that people would really love. You know, my mom is very elderly these days, and she would love just the gift of time for people to go there and listen to her for long periods of time. She has all these stories, very long stories, but people are all in a rush in Rome. So they don't have time. So what a beautiful gift to give an elderly person some time. Probably, lots of elderly people wouldn't necessarily need money, wouldn't necessarily need much. They've probably accumulated their entire life, unless they are obviously in dire situations. But in there, the practice of dana is really understanding what actually does the person in front of me need, and how can I help them if I can help them. And so that's more what we're talking about here, is going, okay, so this person needs time. I have no time, but maybe I can cut some time out. Maybe, okay, I don't have 30 minutes to listen to this lady's stories, but maybe I can cut out 5 minutes from whatever else, I will do later, and listen to this person for 5 minutes. And then next time, maybe I'll try and cut out 6 minutes, 7 minutes, 8 minutes, and so forth. And it's the same with material stuff as well, going, what does this person need right now? What does this situation need right now? Does it actually need, I don't know, cups, or does it need money? Right? Or does it need whatever type of contribution? So this is, once again, the reason why monastics and mendicant traditions are mendicants. They actually create the conditions because we can't ask people. So like, for example, when I go pindapat, I can't ask people, hey, I want the food, etc., etc. So what happens, and this is what I find so delightful about going alms round, is that people then start becoming curious. Why are there are these, weird looking people there with their bowls? And then they figure out, okay, probably they want money. So then they come and they try to give us money, and we're like, no, sorry, we can't accept money. We can only accept food. They're like, oh, food. Okay, interesting. What type of food? And so they start asking us, so is it food only for today, or can you store food, etc., etc.? But they give us then, usually people are so generous, so they will give us a donation. But what is really beautiful, aside from the donation itself, is that momentum of the heart, that this person, a complete stranger, right, takes the time to take this curiosity, and this willingness of wanting to help another stranger on the street. And this then is a trickle down effect to their neighbors, trickle down effect to the person on the street, trickle down effect to everyone else in society. And so this is basically, I think, something that benefits the giver, obviously, and you've seen it yourself. You're like, wow, yeah, giving is great, and also benefits society at large. And the balance is, of course, being realistic with our means. So if we are householders and we have, for example, a family, we have children, etc., and we have 100, then we should not give 100 to whomever we meet on the street, but we should also take into account the needs of our children, the needs of our partner, and so forth, and also our needs, and then take some of it and give it to others, whether it's monastics or other people who are in need that we might find along the way. And then we can practice and, just once again extend our capability of giving, like a superpower. I'm going to make the Dana superpower. I hope that answered your question.
I, I, wa- I wanted to say thank you. Also, what I took from that is the fact that giving is a state of mind. It's like we have to understand that the generosity doesn't necessarily mean taking away from somebody you love. You can give things that like your time and attention and help. It's a state of mind that you kind of share, and it spreads, that trickle down and trickle down. Yeah, it's a power that grows. It's a good point. Thank you.
Absolutely. The Buddha says that we should give understanding that it's an ornament of mind. So just, like how we feel pretty if we have a nice makeup or a nice ornament, nice jewelry, like whatever we do, right, to beautify ourselves. It's giving, like generosity. It's the most beautiful ornament of mind that we have. So when we understand it that way, we're like, wow, look at this beautiful, generous mind. Then in that way, actually, we're practicing really well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aya. I'll just ask if you have any final words you'd like to share, maybe where people can support the project in Italy, and also where people may be able to reach out to you or get access to more of your teachings and your work online.
Yes, thank you, Bante. Or maybe I'll type it in, Empty Cloud Italia, where you can find all the information on the project here in Italy, emptyclouditalia.org. I put it in the chat. And from there should be actually links on that website also to Empty Cloud USA, which is emptycloud.org. And we have, you can reach out at any time and to us monastics there. Thank you so much, Bante, for this invitation and for this warm-hearted community. Sa
Okay, thank you so much, Ayya, and take care, everyone.
Sadhu.
So the information to learn more about Ayya's projects will be on emptyclouditalia.com. And anyone who would like to ask any more questions or spend some meditative time together, I'll be sitting in the Discord for a little bit after this event ends. Okay, thank you everyone for being here, and take care.